When this topic of showmanship comes up, it's like, oh crap, I've got the fair and it starts in 2 weeks. And you think you're going to then, at that point, start worrying about your showmanship.
All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. They just finished up with the Best in Shows for Open and Youth. First off, we have Jacinta Taulbee. Jacinta is a judge that I've known for multiple decades, and she's judged at numerous county fairs throughout the state. I'm excited about tonight. For anybody that's watching at home or that's here in the crowd, I think it's a great opportunity to learn from judges that judge at majority of the county fairs. They're here tonight. I am going to record a few more of them outside of tonight that can make it. Excuse me. But I'm looking forward to learning from them and help you guys out to improve your skills back at home at your county fair, whether it's in showmanship, market, or another aspect of breeding and showing rabbits. But first off is Jacinta Taulbee, and she's going to be focusing on how to prepare for showmanship.
Okay, a lot of you guys think or whatever when this topic of showmanship comes up, it's like, oh crap, I've got the fair and it starts in 2 weeks. And you think you're going to then, at that point, start worrying about your showmanship. That's not the time to start worrying about it. Time to start thinking about it or whatever is when you select what rabbit you're going to be using. People often say, well, you know, little does are better than little bucks. And I can only tell you from experience sometimes that if they're a lot younger than what they would be, maybe 4 or 5 months old, little does pretty much so are maybe a little bit more laid back, so to speak. The bucks are just like little boys. They're nosy, they're everywhere. But as they tend to get older or whatever, and you're still showing that rabbit, does get very hormonal. They can change the personality that you'd swear you brought Frankenstein to the fair and not your own little rabbit at that point. So, you know, at that point, bucks are kind of like, yeah, well, do this again. They kind of set there. There's something more to think about. Another thing to think about when you're going to be doing your showmanship. I know a lot of you guys, that's all you have. I do some fairs where they might have 2 or 3 breeding rabbits other than Californian or New Zealand. You know, that's their whole thing is market rabbits. Market rabbits or whatever, I always call them rippers and tearers. They're not going to set down for you. They're probably not the rabbit. You know, I've did many fairs or whatever where they've told me, I've used my rabbit, and it's like, honey, how long have you had your rabbit here? Used it. And it's like, it's 4 years old. Well, that's fine, unless there's not some sort of disqualification or the rabbit looks like, you know, real thin or something like that. That's fine that you use that rabbit for showmanship. It's probably not going to place well in classes, but it'll be a rabbit that you'll use for showmanship. You know, that kind of takes the place. So that's something to think about. If you're only having friars that you're going to be using for showmanship, you're probably going to be just a little disappointed. There's, you know, exceptions to the rule always. You get a hold of one or whatever, it just sits there. Another thing or whatever you want to consider or whatever, I know we've always did that before any big shows. We live out and there's not a whole lot of noise. We run the radio. We start adding noise with what's going on around, you know, like have to live over here today with that announcements or whatever. It freaks most rabbits out. Most of the time at fairs, there's tractor pulls going on. There's all kinds of things going on. So that's something also to keep in mind. You want to kind of acclimate them into thinking that, okay, there's all this noise. It's not just like, hey, buddy, how are you doing today kind of little thing that you're doing. Another thing is the rabbit the size appropriate for you to be able to do showmanship with? If you have a really large rabbit, and you guys are small, even myself or whatever, my hands are a lot smaller than guys' hands. I can't turn certain rabbits over the same exact way. You know, I turn rabbits like dwarfs and Polish, something dwarf hotos, something like that that's smaller. It's much, much easier to turn that rabbit over, even for myself. And you'll be holding it just a little bit different when you do the showmanship as far as where your hand should go and how to turn the rabbit over and things like this. So think, were you going to take the Flemish giant and have the judge and expect to be, in your 10 years old? That's probably not a good idea of what you're going to take for showmanship. So you really should think that through about how big the rabbit's going to be at showtime when you do this. Start reading up. I guess maybe one of the things or whatever, when you guys do this or whatever, I can usually always pick out the ones or whatever, the young ladies or whatever that has dressed their rabbits in baby doll clothes. Can always tell they carry it in and, it's a baby, that's up over their shoulder and everything. The first real loud noise, that rabbit's going to be gone. It's going to be out of your arms. But, I can pick those out. I can pick out the ones where maybe a family didn't have money that year to support a large animal project. And they're like, here's my rabbits. Usually for showmanship, I still ask them to do things or whatever. But I usually ask them a lot different questions like, did you like anything at all about the project? Well, tell me, would you do it again? So, they do get something. I get some strange answers, but I can usually, like I say, pick that out also or whatever, where somebody's like, this year, it just wasn't in the cards for us to put forth a lot of money. There's also some counties and everything that require showmanship. I get some kids, it's just like, I hate being out here. It shows. I mean, it absolutely shows. But I still try to do something to try to get some sort of accomplishment from them of why you have to do this, actually, or whatever, what you're training for, what we call it showmanship, but you're training for your first year ever of a job interview. Showmanship is you're selling yourself. You're trying to sell the attributes of your knowledge, the attributes of your rabbit. So when you practice this or whatever, especially talking to an adult, lots of times I don't start my showmanship off that way. Well, lots of times we talk about something else ahead of time, like a young lady or whatever has got the cutest little earrings in her ears, something or whatever that I might start with or whatever instead of myself being intimidating. Another thing that parents should think of and not get so upset, because parents, I swear, get more upset than the kids get upset, is, you got to remember back, did you ever think in a choir performance or anything, everybody in the audience was staring right at you? They're not. They're looking at their own child. But, you don't realize that until you're older, that's what they were doing. But, you think, oh my gosh, it's a lot of pressure to be out there in the show arena. And the show arena is packed with all kinds of people. I mean, it's very intimidating. So I always look at it or whatever, you guys are winners. You can buy a really expensive rabbit, and it can do fairly well, but you can't buy knowledge that showmanship gives you. That's something that you cannot purchase and you cannot buy or practice. So some of the things, if you want to start or whatever with ARBA, they're on their website, has a score sheet. Some fairs give me this score sheet, and I guess I'm just not talented enough to multitask, because I have a heck of a time when they want me to fill this score sheet out and listen at the same time. I'm just not great at it, but I follow the same sort of things. It will tell you or whatever, like I say, it's got a score sheet, but I keep this in my mind of what's out there. I can tell you one of the biggest things or whatever that's going to lower your score automatically is if you walk in that show arena and you suitcase that rabbit. That's like the ultimate no-no to me. It's like they're not born with a suitcase on their back. You pull every bit of flesh away from the skin, from the muscle, and then you wonder why when the judge complains or tells you, not complains, but tells you or whatever, this rabbit's weak in the shoulders or it's really loose in the shoulders. Not saying that's all the thing, but a lot that can cause that. So when you do come out, you start at the front and you work your way back when you're doing this. If you're telling me or whatever, and one of the things are, make sure you try to remember that they have two eyes. They don't just have one. So that means it's not a cyclops rabbit. And you want to look at both eyes. You young people, they kind of get carried away and it's nervous and they do all this or whatever and they look into the rabbit's eyes, but they never look into the other eye. It's simple little things like this. Practice yourself doing it. You know, with the phones and everything you can do, you can have your parents record you, see how it sounds. Lots of times I get ones that's so full of what they've read as knowledge. I don't want to hear that unless I ask that question or whatever, unless it concerns that rabbit. I hear this long song and dance. They start into it or whatever about the whole lineage of that breed of rabbit. Well, that really doesn't have a whole lot to do with showmanship. Unless I was to ask something, do you know what? Lots of times I give an example for that or whatever. It's like, do you know what rabbit, if you have a Californian, do you know the point markings on the rabbit? Do you guys know? Or if they have this, do you know where those point markings come from every other rabbit? Whether if it's a wool breed, you know it's called points. It's called Californian marked. It's called Himalayan marked. It goes back to the Himalayan rabbit. So, you know, I might ask something like that. But to hear a reverse robotic answer, that doesn't do it for me. I don't care for that. Another thing you want to consider, you don't want to come out into the show arena and have gum in your mouth. You have no idea how much it look like a cow out there chewing. You don't even realize you're doing it. Try practicing in front of a mirror also or whatever. Quit rubbing the rabbit. The rabbit, I swear, sometimes it doesn't have any fur left on it, where it's a nervous tick of where you start patting the rabbit, and they pat it and pet it and pet it and pet it, and it's like, okay, stop. Okay, doubt you have any fur left on that poor little rabbit after it's did all that. That's a nervous tick. We all do silly things or whatever, and we don't even realize we're doing them when we do that. So that's something to consider, that you don't want to do that. Also, if you follow the score sheet or whatever, it tells you you're checking for moon eye or the right color. I might stop you a little bit or might wait till you completely run through, and I might ask you, well, I seen you said you was checking for eye color. What is the correct eye color? So I kind of, you know, all this business of what they're checking for, do they really know, or are they just repeating it? So that's something you want to consider. You don't want to wait till it's fair time into where you're like, oh, that, you know, she asked me things that I had no idea. And believe me, I've tried to keep my cool over time, because I've had little girls and young men or whatever tell me that they've checked their rabbits for termites instead of ear mites. They've just got just a little mixed up. And no matter what a young person answers or whatever, I can never laugh at that person. It's too scary or whatever. Something like that could turn a child into not wanting to ever take that rabbit project again. But, you know, I've heard lots of answers. I've asked the question before, like, what's kindling mean? And I've told, like, that's a silly question to ask at rabbits. What? It read a book? Because there's a Kindle. I never thought of that. Or that I've asked them before where I said, you know, what's a pedigree? What would it be a pedigree? And I've had a young man, you know, tell me, like, this woman doesn't know anything. Said, what? It's a dog food? And I'm like, well, yeah, kind of, but that's not what I'm asking or whatever. But I never laugh at any of them, because it you know, I can't do that. I appreciate you guys coming out there or whatever, answering those questions. But like say, when you do go through all this or whatever, know what you're checking for. You know, you're checking for abscesses. Well, where would abscesses normally be on the rabbit? You know, you got to practice. I often tell her ones or whatever, if you don't have like the fleece covers or whatever on your hand, it hurts. It hurts a lot. You can take a pair of socks, and all you need to do is cut the toe out of it, and just take one clip with your scissors and cut one little strip. If it's knit, so if you make a hole, it gets too big. Just take a snip into it. Cover your hands, because it hurts when you pick the rabbits up like that or whatever, to go turn them over. And like say, if you're doing a market rabbit project, they're going to scratch you. I'm scratched up and down, and you know, usually when I go to the grocery stores, the clerk usually said, oh my gosh, have you been picking berries or something? It's like, no, I don't dare not tell them. No, I've just been turning rabbits at fair shows. You know, they don't quite understand that. It's a whole meaning, so I just keep that part to myself. But I get scratched up as well too. Another thing to consider when you're getting ready for showmanship, and you're having somebody else, a lot of the fairs will not let you have anybody in to show you. They consider that or whatever as far as almost like you're giving if you have somebody, they would consider somebody like myself or David to be a professional. So they don't want anybody in like that. They'll let 4-H advisors or they'll let family members in. And like I said, I know you guys probably don't think that, but there's several fairs that's that way. And rightly they should. Those kind of things or whatever, as far as trimming toenails and stuff, should take place at home, not at the fair, not doing that. You can imagine how it hurts with your own self if you clip your finger or hurt your finger, and then you, no matter what you seem to do, you seem to be hitting it or touching it from that point on. It doesn't want to set. So there, this whole time you've worked and worked with your animal, and you have a rabbit that's like that, my foot hurts. Person, you guys cut my toenail too short. And you wonder why. It's like, I don't understand it. It behaved at home. The carpet that you use can make a difference. I know, like, it sounds silly, but even from judging the indoor-outdoor carpet that you have for the rabbits on the judging tables, it hurts. If you take your hand to it or whatever, your arm, it's different. So the rabbits, you know, they're not necessarily going to behave the same way. When you go to the fair, don't be surprised or whatever that your cute little rabbit that used to run to the front of the cage no longer runs to the front of the cage. It plasters itself against the back because it's had one too many people poking into it. You know, so you want to be knowledgeable. You really have to watch when you get to the fair or whatever is part of this showmanship too, because you want to keep your rabbit clean. You basically have to overfeed your rabbit. And I say that in the terms of they don't understand, but we feed our rabbits once a day. They come by our cages and they see no feed in the feed thing. They think our rabbits are starving. So that's what I say, or whatever, you overfeed more or less that week of fair. You make sure that your rabbit has food and water in it, because the general public doesn't understand it. They ate 24 hours ago. So that's something to consider too. Practice turning the rabbit over. It's pretty, easy once you get onto it. But like I say, that goes back or whatever to how big your hands are, that when you're going to be able to turn that rabbit over. Not going to be able to. Clip the toenails. I've got a couple different kinds. I like the ones or whatever that you have where the blade comes back. Like I say, it takes 3 people. If the rabbit or whatever is, one of these kinds that you have to worry about or whatever that you can't see, it's got a dark toenails, take a flashlight to it or whatever. It takes almost 3 people sometimes. One person to hold the rabbit, another person to hold the flashlight, and another person that actually trims the toenails that you can't see. If you take a flashlight up against those toenails, you'll be able to do that. So that's all part of showmanship, getting them ready for that. Make sure you have fun. I don't want you to be so gosh darn serious that you're not having fun. I don't mean giggle or anything like that. But, show me that you're enjoying your project and that you enjoy your rabbit. The questions that I ask you or whatever are questions that say more or less, I try to stay that way. David's got a lot of really, really useful information and stuff that he has his programs with. I can tell you this, if you don't have that, which lots of times I get like FFA kids and stuff, that they do not have any kind of idea, and they're kind of put at a real disadvantage because they don't know that information. Study the glossary in your ARBA standard. The book of Raising Better Rabbits and Cavies, that's a great book to, learn. Know your own rabbit's breed. Like I say, when I said I didn't want to know the lineage of the rabbit, I do want to know, well, how big can this rabbit get? Usually with showmanship, I get told, well, it's full grown, it's 5 pounds. This rabbit might be full grown, might not ever get any bigger, but that's not the ideal senior weight for it. Or is there other varieties? How much do they have? Also look over whatever some other kids, if you don't know, when they bring their rabbits to the fair, say, what breed is your rabbit? Because lots of times I'll ask the judge, myself or some the kids, it's like, can you tell me what that breed is down there the young lady has over here? That sort of falls into it too, into part of getting ready for showmanship. Is there any questions anybody would have? Yes.
We do an exhibition brief for showmanship on the fair. Would we have to go into what is COD, has a COD with it?
I would not think so. He wanted to know if you wanted to exhibit a rabbit at the fair. For, as far as we're concerned, the ARBA concerned, it's an exhibition rabbit, meaning it's not a recognized breed or variety at that point in time. Here in Ohio, there's 88 counties, and every one of those 88 counties has their own show rules. So I can't really say that what you would have to do, because none of them's the same. I mean, you need to find that out. Also, that's something before you select your rabbit that you're going to take for showmanship. Like I say, believe me, the rabbit's personality changes from what you've had at home to what you get to once you take it to the fair.
So like if they ask you something about the rabbit, you have to go into like about the breed, you have to go into the COD?
No. No, I wouldn't think so. Is there any other questions? Like I say, showmanship is fun. Don't, make me, I like to have fun with you guys. I enjoy it too. So, like I say, all the silly little questions sometimes I've been asked, at least they had, the ability to say something, like they told me it had termites in its ears. Now, I know the grandfather came up to me later and he said, "How in the world did you not laugh?" And I said, "Because she was serious. She had heard it. She thought it was ear mites and termites. They sound the same. She was nervous, but have a decent time. Don't be so rigid or whatever. I don't like robotic." Is there any other questions? I know David's going to be going over the actual what you're going to be checking or whatever in the how you do that. But make sure that you know. I usually always ask her whatever. Part of showmanship is like, does your rabbit have a disqualification? Your rabbit that you're showing, So that's one of the things. It's like, if it does, it does. Tell me what you'd change about this rabbit. So, but anyhow, if there's no more questions right now, be ready to look forward to this year's fairs.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you so much, Jacinta. It's very informative, and showmanship is difficult. I know showmanship in rabbits is much harder, I feel, than the large animal species. You guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's much more difficult knowing that you have to go through all the different steps, and you're checking the health and quality of the rabbit. Hi everyone, it's David with Rabbit Show. Have you learned something in this video so far? Hit that like button so that you continue to see our newest videos.